Healing the mother wound has got so many aspects. When we have this perception of how we should mum, or what our day should look like, or this is when we get trapped and we get pulled into these expectations from other people.
Well, I think what's pretty amazing that we could speak to the lineage is, when in doubt, go to the source. And what was the source? The light within.
True responsibility is being able to hear the whispers beyond the noise and tune into your heart. What is your heart saying? And respond to your heart. Respond to life versus react. And that's how you can witness the deep inner work that we've done within ourselves.
The gift that has come out of this journey and process of healing the mother wound has been learning this concept of self-mothering. For me, it's really looked like learning to reconnect with myself, my body, and then be able to meet my own needs, offering gentleness towards myself rather than criticism.
Hello, beautiful souls. It is Sophia from Sacred You. Thank you so much for being here. But before we dive into today's Wisdom Circle, I have a small request from my heart. If our conversations ever resonate with you or support you on your journey, please subscribe to our channel or like this video. It helps us grow Sacred You, welcome more powerful voices into this space, and keep you connected to everything we share. Thank you so much for walking this path with us, and let us begin with today's conversation.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Wisdom Circle around healing the mother wound. I am joined currently by Elizabeth, and we might be just having a powerful conversation, and that is perfectly okay. So this is a recurring Wisdom Circle, and we always seem to go into some different dynamic or a different aspect of this, because healing the mother wound has got so many aspects. And I know for me, my relationship with my mum isn't the conventional one that I grew up believing we should have. And it was actually shifting that perspective of how my mum should show up versus how she does show up that actually allowed me to have a better relationship with her. Yes, it doesn't always look right on how it should be on the outside to other people, but at the same time, it works for my mum and I. It's what aligns. And when I let go of that perception of what it should look like, that is when I really stepped into a more powerful space. And I feel that even as being a mum myself, when we have this perception of how we should mum, or what our day should look like, or this is when we get trapped and we get pulled into these expectations from other people, and our own mother wound can be created for our children. So this is where we step into, where can we stop it, and where can we really allow ourselves to thrive and be who we are as our own person. So I'm going to ask Elizabeth and Abby to introduce themselves, but when you introduce yourself, if you also want to say what your mother wound was, how it's showing up in your life in a brief summary, and Janaki as well, that would be amazing. So Elizabeth, if you want to go first and let these beautiful people know who you are.
Sure. Thank you so much, Catherine. My name is Elizabeth Kipp. I'm a stress management and historical trauma specialist and ancestral clearing practitioner. The mother wound is a specialty of mine within ancestral clearing. And interestingly, today, rather spontaneously, I had a healing in my mind, an energetic healing around the mother wound, which was around being able to speak like to my mother instead of, because the wound is that I can't, I shut down in her presence, like I can't speak. So I had a bunch of stuff came up from way when I was little, and spontaneously on the spot, my psyche just rewrote that whole scene so that I was actually speaking up instead of shutting down to my mom. It was really cool. So that's just a quick little introduction to me.
I love that, Elizabeth. And what divine timing. I always love divine timing. Especially repairing that perspective. Again, it's that perception shift, right? It's, oh, what if that didn't happen? What would that have looked like instead? And how would I show up without having that expectation that I'd put on myself for whatever reason? And it's completely valid and how that can shift. Thank you, Elizabeth, and welcome. And Abby, beautiful mum, welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Abby Teixeira, and I'm calling in from Treaty 6 territory on Turtle Island, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, I'm a trauma recovery guide, and a feminine leadership mentor. And I'm a mama of four, as you mentioned, four little ones. And I support the work I do is that I support cycle breaking women, especially Black, Indigenous women of color. These are moms, healers, creatives, just really moving out of survival and into embodied leadership. And how I do that is by creating spaces where they're able to show up completely as themselves with their truth, their grief, their wisdom, and really be seen and transformed. And the topic of the mother wound is definitely, that's a loaded question for an intro, but I can just touch on, as I mentioned, I'm a survivor and I grew up around abuse of all forms. And as such, I live with a complex trauma. And my mom and I have an incredible relationship. She was somebody that I always very much looked up to, and she was my safe person growing up. And I didn't really discover that I had a mother wound until I became a mom. And my firstborn is a girl, she's my daughter. And yeah, it opened up the Pandora's box for me to really have to acknowledge certain things that my inner child desperately needed to be acknowledged for and validated in the experience, and how her role played in my childhood, my growing up, all of that kind of stuff. And so that has been deep transformative work for sure. And I also very much lean into ancestral medicine and healing and reconnection and reclamation, all of that stuff to really harness that power, because this is the deep work. It's deep lineage healing type of work to really face these wounds, like the father wound, the mother wound, and learn the medicine and the wisdom that comes through that healing process. I'm very much looking forward to this discussion today.
Thank you, Abby. And yeah, it is a lot of work. This is why they say we're the cycle breakers, right? Because we
Mm.
are stepping in and facing it rather than running the other way. And I like
Yeah.
the term cycle breakers because it is, because you can see in the lineage how it just
Mm.
keeps repeating and repeating. And if you don't stop it with you, then it's going to be passed on to our kids. Often I work with a lot of mums as well, and that can be the greatest motivator, right? I don't want my children to have to go through this, or my grandchildren, or however that looks in your life. So a big welcome, Abby, and thank you for sharing. And Janaki, welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your relationship with your mum is, or how the mother wound shows up, just briefly? I know it can be a big thing.
Thank you. Yes, this topic is so yummy. I am Johnny Kiwit. I am a soul architect, and I support visionaries and heart-led leaders to align with their true self, clear the overthinking, the overdoing, and connecting to your true being through embodiment, through somatic movement, through sound, so we can ground back into our bodies and come home where we're heaven on Mother Earth. That is what I'm here. I'm being a bridge. So I serve as a messenger, a muse, a mentor, and a mirror, of course, the divine mirror. And so I love bringing the back in our life with presence and pleasure and play and power, awakening our inner power. So, the mother, oh my God, this has been the most glorious journey. And the reason why I said yes, even though I had other things going on, I was like, and I'll share more of the epic alignment of all of this that happened today. And when I was in the process with supporting someone, I was like, holy fuck, oops. Anyways, my mother, what I received is the more we restore our mother wounds, the more we can forgive, we're giving back. And so our mother is a receptivity energy. So if we have resentment, unconscious or conscious resentment with our mother, then we are sending our energy away. We're closing off our receiving energy. And it was a lady who said, I went to an event, Mint Magic. She said, if you think you have a money problem, you have a receiving problem. And right then and there is when I heard God within me. You're going to create an offering that restores the relationship with mommy and money, because that's the core of it all. Divine Mother births in creation. So if we have any type of resentment, unconscious or conscious, then we're cutting off that connection of creation.
Powerful. Mummy and money. I love it. I truly love that. And my other favorite that I've heard recently is where the joy goes, the money flows. Because so often we resist that joy, and when we think we're in, it's like a completely different wisdom circle, but it's all linked to all these things that we inherit, even our beliefs that come from our parents, especially our mum and that sort of thing. My dad is one that was like, work hard, otherwise you're not going to earn enough money. So I was like, oh, unless I work hard, I can't get money. So then, in the other thing, it's my mum's, we have to buy everything in the bargain bin. We can't have nice things unless it's in the bargain bin, which is from that scarcity thing. So again, even those are wounds that carry through and can impact our receiving, like you said. And also that underlying, yeah, resentment. Then we're blocking the joy. We're stopping that money from flowing in and allowing us to receive. We're powerful. Thank you, Janaki. And I love divine timing. I truly do. And for anyone wondering who I am, so my name's Catherine Cristani. I'm an inner authority guide and a writer and speaker on conscious leadership and human potential. So I guide beautiful souls to remove all the blocks stopping them from stepping into their highest timeline. And a lot of the time, it'll come from ancestral wounds, it'll come from inner child work, it'll also come from these energy blocks we create in our life from different perspectives and things and just beliefs that get put on us. And I'm also the host of Empowered Entrepreneurs, which is a beautiful Sacred You group, which is on a Monday Australian time and I think Sunday evening US time. I'm really bad with time zones, but look it up on the website. But so today I feel to talk about a little bit of what each of you called upon. It's like this inner child within us that needs to be seen and acknowledged and loved and have that joy so we can receive. And so often we ignore that part. We forget to have fun. Life gets too serious. And if you really want to experience joy or fun again, look at children. Like everything can be fun. You can be in a waiting room with nothing to entertain them and they'll still create some form of fun and enjoy and allow that to shift. And it's that inner child within us that, whether it comes from our mom or our father, but that mother wound and that need to be loved and held, seen for who we are, it can really flow on and impact us on who we are today and how we show up in this world. So I guess the thing I want to open up is, how has that inner child needing that mother's love or needing that mother's comfort or understanding or being seen shown up in your life and impacted? And anyone can go who wants to, I don't mind.
Well, I guess I will go.
Yeah,
Okay.
beautiful.
Wow. So I'm going to share about a beautiful experience that happened today. I tend to be a beautiful trigger for a lot of people because that's what we are. We're all mirrors. And so when we're willing to go into the depths and the darkness and really merge our light and embrace all those triggers, that's what we become. Well, I was meeting this one masculine who we're going to be doing work together. So we decided, let's give ourselves the embodied experience before we facilitate this work. And being the bridge of, we'll share more later. But anyways, I won't go into the story of it, but I triggered his mother wound. And so I said, don't hold this in your body. Let it out. So he let anger out. And then after we were at this river and he was hitting the sand and broke his water bottle. And then it was so beautiful because I said, I'm going to invite you to look in my eyes and see all those who have triggered this wound in you and express it because I can hold it. And so as he was expressing, this beautiful reciprocity, synergy of energy happened where I felt my son speaking through him. So I was able to not only necessarily hold space, let the field hold us both, but stay grounded in my presence while he expressed such intensity, anger, rage, and letting it come through while I stay grounded and breathe through the whole thing and staring in his eyes. And this is what I actually do with my clients. So I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And it was such a beautiful process to give so fully, and yet I received, where I got to give myself grace for those thoughts that I may have put on myself for my son, and give myself forgiveness in that experience as he's expressing anger and rage right in front of my face, and be able to hold the intensity with love and presence. It was so powerful. And so we ended up giving into the river of judgment and diving into grace. And that's why I'm still wet, because we went into the woods and it was such a beautiful experience. That's what's alive right now. That's why I'm like, holy shit. Because it
Yeah,
was such a powerful experience.
beautiful. And I love that you brought up giving ourselves grace, because so often we forget to extend that compassion and forgiveness to ourselves and allowing us to be just as ourselves. And I know as a mum, we've got, like for me personally, I had to learn to put myself first rather than make sure my child was okay, make sure my husband was okay, and then I'm down the bottom and all of a sudden my tea's gone cold or my dinner's gone cold or whatever it looks like. So yeah, thank you for bringing that powerful example and well, real life moment this morning that happened. So amazing. Yeah.
Minutes ago. That's why I was like literally walking to my phone because my phone was about to die, and I'm like still hair wet, bathing suit on, like minutes ago, right before this call. That's how, like, when you say an epic alignment.
Exactly, 100%. And Elizabeth, I know you wanted to share your experience.
I'm going to say something different now. But I just want to say my mother had a lot of challenges. She was a CPSD survivor as well, but she didn't have the tools that we have today, right? And so she didn't have what really she really didn't have a mothering way about her. And as a consequence, terrified of her because she was like, she had a rage thing happening and we never knew when it would happen, but we knew it would happen. So it was like, that was scary. And what happened was, unconsciously, I did everything I could to turn myself inside, outside, backwards, whatever I had to do to try and get her to show me that she loved me. She really didn't have the capacity to show me that, at least not the way I wanted to see it, that's an important piece to hear. And when I had my son, I actually brought him home from the hospital and I broke out into hives. And we didn't know it was hives at the time. We figured out the next day when we went to the doctor. He said, "Man, you've got hives." He gave me some medicine, but he also sent me to his social worker to help me like chill out. But as Abby said, my mother stuff, woof, it just came right to the surface. And so what was interesting was I didn't have a satisfactory model for being a mother. So I actually appealed to my inner child and that wonder, and I made a model up. And of course I did that in concert with my husband, who had a kind of a different kind of model. And that was very interesting to like, how do we change the story without having done the work? I hadn't done a lot of, and I was just facing this wound at the time, and I didn't have support like we have now. This was 40 years ago. But I think what's pretty amazing that we can speak to the lineage is, when in doubt, go to the source. And what was the source? The light within, right? We go back to our original light. And so that's what I'd like to bring in here in this discussion. Thanks I hope that answered the question.
I love that perspective, Elizabeth, because it's creating the new path forward, right? We dismantle all the things of our expectations and allow our light within us to create how we want to show up. We don't have to be, what's the word? It's gone. But we don't have to be shaped by how we were mummed. Or we don't have to be shaped by the things that we didn't enjoy. For me, I wish my mum was present, but now I understand that that wasn't her. That wasn't the relationship we were meant to have. So I love that you bring that perspective in, Elizabeth, and so fascinating that you broke out in hives. It was like you freaked out about being a mum, right? Like you physically were like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing." And people complain about the pregnancy part, but I always say, no, the hard work starts as soon as they're in your arms, right? It's no, that like I could sleep. Yes, not maybe broken a little bit. You have this little human that's depending on you outside of you now, not just on the inside too. So thank you for that perspective, Elizabeth. It's beautiful. And Abby, is there anything you want to add? I'm sure yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I really deeply related to what Elizabeth shared and the process of being the cycle breaker and the process of parenting while reparenting your inner child without having any sort of guide, compass, role model to refer to. It is wild stuff. And that is definitely what my lived experience is currently. And as you're hearing from the different shares tonight, I want to begin by naming that the mother wound isn't just one thing and it's not always obvious. And it certainly wasn't obvious for me before until it really unleashed with when I became a mom myself, right? And sometimes it can look like what happened. There's a very real thing that happened with your mother figure, right? That you can very name. And sometimes it looks like what didn't happen, right? And that's for me what really started to bubble to the surface, right? And really understanding, and Elizabeth named this as well, about just the love that wasn't there or how we weren't loved, right? And the safety that wasn't there, the emotional attunement that wasn't there. And many of us, myself included, really experienced unmet needs, emotional absence, inconsistencies, really being asked to grow up way too quickly. There's an element of parentification that occurred in my own childhood where I grew up really quickly because I had to. I couldn't really be this innocent child and play and have not kind of carefree experience. And these patterns really were shaped by a lot of trauma and by survival. And it's not about blaming our moms because my mom is a survivor as well. And she also didn't have a mother figure that she could attune to. And she was enduring immense abuse throughout our childhood. So there's a lot of justification and understanding. And so for me, there wasn't really a sense of blame, but it was the accountability part and the validation part that even though we had a roof over our heads, even though we had clothes, all the necessities to survive, there were some fundamental things that were missing. And to really understand and see through a different lens can be very jarring for sure. And I know it was for me. And I was afraid to open up this kind of Pandora's box because I was truly afraid that it was going to change my relationship with my mom, who I very much adored. And she was somebody we still have an incredible relationship. And the opposite was true. It only strengthened and deepened my relationship with her because I needed to acknowledge and validate my experience as a little girl, especially as I was now mothering my own children. And I would look at them, especially they say that we get triggered the most when our children reach milestones in their ages where a lot of abuse happened to us or like really big significant traumas happened. And that definitely was true for me with my kids. And I had to look at it, right? And in order for me to look at it, I had to really reconnect with that inner child and allow for her to speak her fears and the things that were scary and the things that were missing and all of that kind of stuff, right? And yeah, it's been an intense journey, but it's also a beautiful one and one that really, when navigated in a gentle and very self-compassionate way, can bring immense healing to lineages, right? Not just this timeline, but let's say the 7 generations before us and after us, right? And that's definitely my commitment for my daughter, right? And my 3 sons. Yeah.
Yeah, and it amazes me when I work with clients or even do things myself, how often when we shift or heal these things, the mum will call. They will
Mm.
call on the phone or they'll send a
Mhm.
message and they're like, my mum's ringing. And I was like, how intriguing. And I feel to share this example that was popped in my head just then. I had this client, and every time we were online and every time we brought up his mum, we got disconnected. Every single time. It happened 5 times in a row to the point it wasn't a coincidence anymore. So and I said, okay, we need to use another word other than your mum because clearly there's some huge level of disconnect there that it's like actually flowing through this point that we
Mm.
can't even have a conversation about it. And he had to go away and do a lot of work. And I'm not sure what happened, but it really triggered him because he was like, oh my goodness, I've never thought about that. And even for me, I did heaps of work on my relationship with my dad. And then it was this practitioner I was working with was like, oh, we haven't spoken about your mom. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want to open that Pandora box. I actually want to try and avoid that. But at the same time, it needed to happen. And exactly like you, Abby, it wasn't like we didn't have the necessities, we didn't have that. It was just missing this element that our soul needed at that time. And for me, it created me being very independent. So I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to be the bad child. I didn't want to, if I got in trouble, I felt like my world had shattered and it ended. So I just avoided that at all costs, even if, it was me just trying to push back and push boundaries and that sort of thing. And in saying that, when it allowed me to be very independent, but it also allowed me to be very independent to the point where I would never ask for help. So these are how they flow on. And when you start to shift that and start to heal that within you and can find that forgiveness for yourself, for your inner child, for your mom, for your dad, whoever it might be, I feel that's when it starts to flow on. And then, yeah, we get the phone calls and yeah, they'll show up stronger. And it's almost the energy around that resentment, like Janaki brought up before, and that energy around it, there's no charge anymore. So you can have a different relationship. It doesn't mean that it will fix everything or it will be perfect or that perception of what you had, but it allows you just to show up in a way where you can truly be yourself and create the lineage that you want to leave for your children and your grandchildren and their children and that sort of thing moving forwards. Wow. I'm just like, wow, that's a lot. It's a lot. And I guess for people who are tuning in, because we're talking about wisdom, is there any key moments that you had that moment either with your child or with yourself and you're like, God, I wish everyone knew just how to do this. I wish everyone just knew how to have some forgiveness or have the courage to look in. Has anyone got any beautiful examples that they would like to share? No, that's a big question.
I can share with you the process that happened to me this morning, which was
Yes.
I was in the car on my way to the local food co-op just to get my shopping done. And I had this spontaneous healing. When I was old enough to stand, something happened and I was crying and my mother's standing over me and she screamed at me, and I'm this like sensitive kid. She screamed at me, "Stop that crying," right? And it really shut me down. And I was it tells you how powerful we are, right? I was such a powerful being in that moment. I don't know how I did it, but I shut that down, the crying function in me. I shut it down. I threw away the key. I have no idea where the key went. I've had a few times where I've actually cried since then, but it's like a thing for me, right? So interesting. That came up. I'm driving into car to the co-op. I'm like, what's happening here? And just as that came up, I saw myself looking at my mother at the age of 18 months or however old I was, standing there, barely able to stand, saying, "I'm crying here, and you're not going to stop me." Instead of just telling her, "This is my life, this is my crying." And you know what? All the stuff around that just went poof. It was so interesting. Rescripting, which is, we do this in EMDR does it. There's a bunch of different therapeutic methods that use this. I'm not a therapist, and I have been through a few of those things. Accelerated resolution therapy I've done. But I thought it was really cool that my own brain just went, "We're doing it now, and this is how we're doing it." Right? So what did I get out of that? I got another step forward in my path of being able to stand in my power and speak authentically and speak when I damn well want to. And so that's an important thing. That's just something that came up for me. I don't know if it really answers the question, but it's alive in this conversation right now.
Yeah, it does. And another form of it, I've had matrix reprinting. That's another therapy form of it. But you can do it yourself, because I think I was at a seminar with Dr. John Demartini, and he was talking about that there's always two sides to a trauma. But so often our brain latches onto the negative, it forgets to flip it to create the positive aspect of it. And that is why we can get stuck in a trauma loop and we can get stuck in the wound. And so his example was this man got kidnapped and ransomed for his company. Like they wanted all this money, he was very wealthy, and he's just sitting there in the moment going, I can't create that money. Like it's all tied up in assets. And he went through this trauma, he's thrown a boot. Anyway, but he couldn't shift out of that trauma pattern. And then Dr. John went to him, well, what were the positives out of the outcome? What was the good thing? He goes, oh, I realized my company could run without me. And I realized how valuable my family is, and I want to spend more time with them. So I shifted that out of that. And immediately the brain got balance because the brain looks for the balance. It looks for that reprint. It looks for the way to see the good and the bad in any situation. And this is about finding the blessing in the unforgivable, right? What was the gift that came from that? And what you shared, Elizabeth, I love that your brain just did it anyways. Like, why couldn't I just cry in that moment? Yeah, I'm going to cry. Let myself cry. And for a lot of us who do inner child work or reprint, like doing any aspect of that, we always say, what does that child need in that moment? What does that child need to make that situation work for them? And it has that powerful ripple effect and goes through everything. So thank you for that example because it can be that simple. Like, why not? Like, I always just think, why not? Why not? Does anyone else have any other beautiful examples that they want to share? Janaki, go for it.
Yes. So my little story was when I spoke up, my parents would fight. So my brain computed that if I speak up, I'm going to cause conflict. So that was the story that I told myself. And so I became the good girl, the people pleaser, the one who would hold back my expression. And so my path of mastery has been turning all of my wounds and wisdoms, my greatest perceived weaknesses into my great strengths. And so one of the perceived weakness that I saw as a child is I was messy. And now that is one of my like zone of geniuses is the divine imperfection and like supporting others to be the real raw messy human. Now when 2 years ago when I gave my mom a sound bath in the bathtub, and in that moment I told her, I said, now that I no longer shame myself for being messy or hide behind the mess or strive for perfection, I no longer shame myself through your eyes. And that's when she looked at me and she says, I have always seen the divine in you. I've always seen you. And so even though she called me her angel, that's what I strived for. And that's the good girl that I tried to be. So I had been on this unconscious pedestal that I had to energetically bash that pedestal to smithereens, because anytime we put ourselves or anyone on a pedestal, it creates that lens of separation. And it was such a huge liberating experience with me and my mother personally. And then when I gifted her a Forgive and Fully Lived session with her father, that even brought us even deeper closer. She's like, Johnny, 50 years of healing. She thought she was just saying it to be nice, doing something. And she goes, that actually works. That process, I'd say it's a little bit of NLP with a whole lot of magic of Johnny. And she's like, 50 years of healing. I've never been able to forgive my father and see him in that light. I see him as the light body. So that was another layer that we were able to connect deeper into. And so that's where I received the message about mommy and money, because of those unconscious resentment. Like I loved my mother, and I didn't know I had all those unconscious resentment because I held back who I truly was. I was the good girl. I was a people pleaser because I wanted my mom to be happy. So I learned to abandon myself trying to hold everyone else. And that was that over responsibility role. And now that I remember, no, actually true responsibility is being able to hear the whispers beyond the noise and tune into your heart. What is your heart saying? And respond to your heart. Respond to life versus react. And that's how you can witness the deep inner work that we've done within ourselves, and what it really brings in, where you start to respond to life versus react. That was super powerful. And I was the one who did it, not her, because she always saw me through the pureness of her eyes. But I put on that mask and took on that over responsibility. And like you said, when you can see the gift in that experience, that pattern no longer requires to repeat itself. So that was my experience. So that's why I received the message about mommy and money.
So powerful. And I saw myself in so many aspects of what you shared as well. So thank you, Jackie. And Abby, I saw you unmuted. I'm sure you've got something to.
Yeah, I love this conversation so much. I know for me, the wisdom that has come out of, or the gift that has come out of this journey and process of just healing the mother wound has been learning this concept of self-mothering, right? And so for me, it's really looked like learning to, first of all, reconnect with myself, my body, right? And then be able to meet my own needs, offering gentleness towards myself rather than criticism, creating safety within my own self, not having to depend or rely on anybody else to create that safety for me. And then these are things that many of us, once again, myself included, that are learning for the first time so that I can then do that, be able to not only model it, but then pass it down to my own children and show them what it can look like, right? And because I can tell them all day long, I was told many things all day long growing up, but I didn't see the actions matching the words. And so a lot of it I didn't absorb. And so I know with my kids, I want them to learn through me what it looks like to see a mom who prioritizes rest, who teaches them about boundaries and embodies boundaries herself, right? Slowing down, how I speak to myself, all of that kind of stuff. And also allowing for myself to receive support from others. That is a big one that for many of us, we struggle to allow ourselves to be held and supported and seen, especially when we come from being wounded by a parent, when the person that was supposed to be your safe person didn't keep you safe, right? And we become untrusting of many people and don't allow for support and receiving to come into the picture, right? And yeah, that has been a lot of the wisdom that I have gained in journeying through the healing, right, of these wounds. And there was one more thing I was going to say, but it flew away. So if it comes back, I will unmute again.
And you're like, it's there, but I can't grab
It's
it.
there. Yeah.
I think you bring up such an important point, Abby, which is, that sometimes the support we thought we needed, we have to create it in other ways too. We have to go and see what we need and create that space and see how that will show up. And I always say, when you're not in the trauma, it's the best time to create those support networks or your dream team or your ensemble of people that you can go to, because life does go up and down, but knowing you can reach out to those people to support. And if it's not your family, that's okay. You can create your own family too. So see how that shows up. But thank you. And Janiki, you were waving your hand. Did you have something to add?
All I was gonna add is the epic alignment, and I was like, this is my life now. As Abby was speaking, flew away. A bird was right in front of me and just flew away. So I love the mirroring of that. So I had to share.
Synchronicities. And we have Rose joining us. Rose, do you have any feedback or comments? I know you can be a passive participant.
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
I have had a real busy day, and I've had my sisters come from out of town to be with me, and then I was resting, and anyway, I'm like in La Land. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm not on that webinar. And so I'm sorry, I'm just listening and catching up a little bit.
You're very welcome to listen. And yeah, oh, okay, thank you. All right, just pop yourself on mute, Rose, and you can just keep listening. And if you want to pop any comments or things in the chat box, that's what I wanted to say. And it's just reminding me when you're speaking, if you can pop yourself on camera, that would be great, just so people
Thank
know too. Thank you, Rose. So I guess there's like really different aspects that we all brought up there, right? We can change our perceptions, we can create the support we need. And really, it's all about connecting back in with what we need in the moment. What does our inner child need? What do we need? What does our soul lead us to? And following that curiosity. And it can be really messy, like Janaki said. Sometimes it's in the chaos that we find the beauty, or we have those moments like driving to the shops where it just hits us. For me, it often happens in the shower. Like I would just be in the shower and that problem or that issue or that feeling, I was like, oh, I understand now. And have to go run and get paper or whatever that looks like. But at the same time, it's really trusting where you're led and trusting that mother wound doesn't have to define how you step forward. You don't have to let it shape everything that comes after. And it might be that you reprint it. It might be that you actually face it head on. It might be that you allow yourself to feel it and create that new support that you need. And that is truly where you can find the balance in that and find yourself through that as well. I don't even know if I've got a question out of that. Whew. I feel sometimes it's funny because cords have come up a lot this week, like cutting cords and talking about disconnecting from cords. And I feel we have to touch upon it just a little bit when we're talking about mother wounds. And it was really interesting. I was on an interview just before this, and the interviewer, she said to me, do we cut cords with our children? And I said, we can. Because sometimes the cords that we create, and cords is just a fancy word of saying energetic attachments. Okay. So if anyone's, what's a cord? I don't understand. And it's that energetic alignment. And what can happen is sometimes the relationships we create with our parents or even with our children or other people in our life can be very imbalanced. And when we cut those cords, it allows the energy to be transferred into something more powerful if we're willing to put the intention into it. I've had parents come in and they've had really difficult relationships with their children, especially if children going through addiction and they just keep coming back to them for money and they know that the money's being used to feed the addiction. What do you do if you're the parent in that case? And I was like, what do you want to do? I've got to cut them off. Okay, let's do that. And then they freak out because they think by cutting the cord, they're cutting the relationship with their child or cutting the relationship with their mom or whoever it is. But really, you're cutting the energy that's not in alignment and you're allowing yourself to step in. So that's my interpretation of creating new connections. But if anyone wants to add into that and building new foundations, I would love to have that. Yeah.
I have an example of that. I wouldn't really use the words cutting cords in ancestral clearing work. We're really releasing what no longer serves. But I understand what you're saying. I had an experience, my son is 44, and I had an experience maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, where there was something, we weren't like communicating well, and I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. And neither one of us were communicating well, and we both actually teach that, so it was really ironic, right? And curious, what's happening here? And so I asked Source, like, what is this? Because I can't see it. Please show me what this is. And 3 days later, I got an answer. It doesn't usually take that long, but I always get an answer. It took a while. And it was so interesting because I realized, oh, I am invested in him fulfilling his destiny. That's actually not my job. My job is to love him and be supportive and keep him safe if he was 34. I don't need to worry about keeping him safe anymore. He's not in my house anymore. He's not a kid. It's not my job to help him fulfill his destiny. That's his job. So right in that moment, I made a realignment in our relationship. And you could say I cut that inappropriate, unhealthy attachment to me having some role in him fulfilling himself, which wasn't mine. And he was halfway across the world at an event at the time. We were not in communication, but that was the end of the problem in the relationship. It was so interesting. So that's a really blatant example of using the connection between mother and child and kind of like getting it aligned properly and how that affects the relationship.
Yeah.
And who knows that that could have aligned the whole lineage, right?
Yeah. But I love that you brought up you're not in control of how they achieve their destiny, because we're not. But as parents, we think we can. We sometimes think we can, but at the same time, exactly like you said, we're just there to love and to hold space and to be there and let them be themselves. Sometimes I find that hard too because I homeschool. So it's, oh, what are those expectations? But at the same time, I'm like, there are no expectations. We just need to learn however way it works, right? However that shows up. And That is such a beautiful example. But Elizabeth, if that was the end, that was like, yeah, okay, that's what I had to step out of and allow. And it comes back to us too. How are we not allowing ourselves to be? Why are we living to someone else's expectations of us more than what we expect of ourselves? So thank you for that beautiful example. And Abby, I feel like you have something to share.
Yeah, I just think about my how it's pertinent in my life, like the idea of cutting these energetic cords or seeing what's mine to carry and what's not mine and deciphering when discerning what that is. And again, bringing it back to my own relationship with my own mom and understanding that I talked about how I was so fearful to look at this relationship and explore the mother wound because I was afraid that I was gonna like it was gonna impact our relationship negatively, right? And that I would look at her in a different light and all of that kind of stuff. But like I said, the opposite was true. And it was because I learned how to create boundaries around what is actually mine to carry and worry about or whatever, and what's actually hers. And for a very long time, because in dysfunctional families, there's a lot of enmeshment and everyone's just enmeshed in each other's stuff. And it's very messy in terms of like cords, right? Everybody is entangled. And I'm creating my own family right now, right? I have my own children and my own partner, and we have our own household. And that's where my energy, where I want most of my energy to go, not thinking about all the stuff that's happening in my family of origin and then losing sleep over it and then allowing it to affect how I run my home and how my energy is around my kids and stuff, right? So for me, it was a really big lesson to learn about healthy boundaries around certain family members, and that's out of love and respect for myself and for them, right? Because there's a very big difference between somebody wanting you to know, be in the know of all their lives and all of that kind of stuff, just to know, just to have somebody to vent to and all that kind of stuff. And versus somebody who wants your guidance, wants your help, wants your support, wants for you to be able to hold them and maybe give some advice or that kind of a thing. And there was certainly not a lot of that happening in some of these relationships. It was more so to just dump but never really want to make any actual changes and stuff like that, right? And so, yeah, so those were some big lessons for me to really learn how to keep clean energy lines and boundaries that are supportive for all relationships in my life. And that took a lot of healing. It took a lot of healing to learn that I have my own needs and that there's certain things that I need and there's certain things that I don't need in my life. And carrying other people's trauma is definitely one of those, especially when they're not in a position to want to actually heal from it. They want to continue to repeat and perpetuate these patterns and stuff. Yeah.
100%. And I love that you brought that point up, Abby, because we cannot help a victim that wants to stay the victim. If they want to stay in their story, it's not our job to rescue them because then we
Mm.
become the savior and then they put our power in us. And this is where, like, circling back to the start when we're talking about cycle breakers, because you have the courage to step out of that and go, actually, no, I want to change this. I want to do something different. And a lot of the time, I remember going to this course and someone saying that people just share their stories because they want to validate the story and stay in the story. They don't actually want to change it. And when you don't placate them to the story and can step out of it and just say, why don't you just do that differently? That they'll either take that on board or they'll stay in the story. So for me, I always used to be late to everything, like everything. And I rocked up to my naturopath one day and I said to him, "Oh, I'm always late." He goes, "Why don't you just leave 5 minutes early?" I went, "Oh, like it was an epiphany moment, but at the same time, it was so simple. But I just needed someone not to placate my story and say, oh, yeah, I'm the same. Or I just needed someone to give that different perspective. And I feel sometimes
Mm.
when we're doing that healing, it comes back to changing the perspective. It comes back to actually how do I want my story to look? How do I want my life to feel more aligned? And what feels good for me and my family, exactly like you said, versus what everyone is perceiving or the story that we think we need to stay in to keep going and to keep that cycle. Do you want to stay in that story and the universe will just keep giving you the same story? And oh, I'm not going to end that relationship because I want to be the good girl or the people pleaser and I'm doing what everyone says. Then you get broken up with, and then you get another relationship that's the same, and another relationship is the same. When all you had to do was say, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm I'm going to end this relationship because it's not good for me and step out of it. Not because my parents tell me they're the right fit fit, or my friends tell me they're the right fit. I don't feel that. What does that look like differently? I love that you brought up all those aspects. Oh, big juicy conversation today. I love it. I love it. And as we start to finish our time together, I'm feeling called to ask, what is one thing, if you could tell your younger self, what is one thing you would tell yourself now about your relationship with your mum, or just something in general, stepping forward? I don't know if you want to go
What's
first.
coming through for me is, and Elizabeth talked about it earlier on, about how her mom she wasn't capable of showing her the love that she needed. And I had a very profound healing experience a few years ago when I was working on the father wound. And I was with a dear friend of mine, a mentor, and she was doing a healing session with me. And the belief that kind of manifested for me as a little girl and having a just really unhealthy relationship with my dad is this notion that I wasn't that like, how come he can't love me? Like, it's because I'm just not lovable, right? And just this, and of course, trying to fill that void with all the wrong things, right? And it was something that puzzled me for a lifetime. Like, why couldn't he love me? Like, why all of that? And it was just about me. There was something wrong with me. And I would tell little me what was told to me in that experience was that it has, like, you are absolutely worthy and deserving of love, unconditional love. He is just not capable of, first of all, he doesn't even love himself. Therefore, he's also not capable of loving you. And that was a moment for me that just cracked me open. And I understood. I was like, how could I ask him to love me when he couldn't even love himself? And anyone else for that matter, right? And so it had nothing to do with me. And so I am worthy and lovable in all my imperfections and who I am and deserving, right? And so that's what I would tell her.
Powerful. Thank you,
Beautiful.
Abby.
Love that. That's really resonates. And the flip side of that for me would have been when I was little, I knew my mom was unwell. And of course, as the kids, like, what do? We try and take it on, right? We try and do whatever we can to make things better, right? So she would get mad and do things, and I would make excuses and say, oh, she's whatever. And I spent more time in that than I did in feeling the feeling that was happening to me and actually acknowledging what was happening to me. And it wasn't until many years later that when I started doing the work, that I was able to give that part of me the credit. So that's the other side of what you're talking about, Abby. It's just the flip, right? So we got to work both sides of that equation. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that in. Yeah. And thanks for the question, Catherine.
That's right. And it's beautiful. And sometimes we do need to go back and tell our inner child those things. And don't dismiss having that conversation with any version of you. I remember I was healing a recurring pattern that happened in my life. And I went to spirit, how many times do I have to do this? And I actually called in all these versions of me from different ages that it kept reappearing. And it was really powerful because it made me just go, actually, I can do this blanket healing and it will heal like all these things just in one go, which is really beautiful. And for me, the biggest thing I would tell myself is that you are enough. Like, I don't have to strive for that perfection. I don't have to strive for that ridiculous feeling of everything has to be perfect, that I always have to get the top grades and all those things that I put those perceptions on myself. So I would tell myself, you are enough. And Janaki, you tuned in just in time. We're just finishing up and we're just sharing if we could tell something to our inner child, like, or our younger self, what is one thing we would share with them?
Oh, I love this. We literally did this the other day in my Prospers portal. We just journaling. It's okay to have needs. It's okay to have needs. I made up that it wasn't okay to have needs. And it's okay to ask and let yourself receive. And you are loved exactly the way you are. And your path, you get to have this journey of forgetting so you can remember. So those would be the things that I would tell. That I did tell my inner child recently. And then letting her know that she's so powerful and loved the way she is.
Perfect. Amazing. Wow. Just wow. Like, I feel we touched on some really powerful things today. Look, my throat chakra is going because I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so much. But I want to invite back Sophia just to finish up our time and our space together. If you're there, there she is. Beautiful.
Yes, I am here. And thank you ever so much for another great conversation, Catherine and Elizabeth, and Abby, and of course, Janica, who's come back, the wonders of technology. Great tips. I love it, especially at the end. I'm certainly going to be going back and watching it for everyone else who is watching us live or even the replay. Do click on these links, reach out to all these amazing women who have given up an hour of their time to share their wisdom on healing the mother wounds. And I also even heard about the father wounds too. It's another great conversation we can bring in even more. And click on the links below, like I said, and also check out Sacred You while you're there. Come and join us for free. We've got lots of wisdom circles coming up. I do believe Janica is coming up very soon for her wisdom circle. So I'm looking forward to that, Janica. And for everyone else, we will be back for healing the mother wounds, honoring the mother line, same time next month. We will see you then.